Bon, voilà, lundi matin, très tôt, 8 heures du matin. Alors bon, je me réveille, on va commencer. Petit déj, je joue la télé, on écoute un peu de nouvelles, et ça commence très bien. Alors nous voilà. Mais avant, on s'en va qu'est-ce qui se passe dehors. Oh, c'est toujours tranquille. Bon, il y a juste un petit truc, hein. C'est à peine si, enfin, il n'y a personne. Seulement, voilà, les autobus d'école qui vont amener les petits gamins, les petites filles, les fillettes. Bon, et moi, je commence ma journée. C'est le gris aujourd'hui, mais au moins il ne neige plus. Et voilà ici le balcon. Et je vous assure, je sais pas comment que je vais déblayer tout ça parce que j'étais assez idiot que c'est ici là que j'ai laissé ma pelle. Allez, voilà. Les petits qui vont à l'école. C'est du n'importe quoi. N'importe quoi. Mais je vous assure que je ne voudrais pas cet hôtel. Parce que c'est la grille. N'importe quoi. Ah, c'est fou comment il y a de la neige. Si je ne vous disais pas que j'étais à Montréal-Nord, vous auriez pensé que j'étais à Colorado Springs en train de visiter ma petite Amélie, la petite puce. Allô ma puce. Avant, on va faire un peu de lumière. Each of the flight numbers is significant. Flight 1989 honoring Taylor Swift's album 1989, and Flight 87 will honor Travis Kelce's jersey number. And word is Taylor Swift will
concert in Tokyo the night before, and the fight is about 13 hours. Next, Britney Spears is extending an olive branch to Justin Timberlake.
And she went on social media overnight writing that she's deeply sorry for some of the things she wrote in her memoir, The Woman in Me. She added, I also wanted to say I'm in love with Justin Timberlake's new song, Selfish.
Timberlake faced criticism after being a target in Spears' book, which included details about their previous relationship.
Next, the new trend when it comes to divorce in America.
It's called gray divorce. New figures show in recent years, divorce rates have doubled among people over 55, and they've tripled among couples over 65. Experts say it's because couples are marrying later and they are staying healthy longer.
More people also celebrating their divorce. One online service reports a record number of divorce party invites being sent. Next, a bizarre sight along the Indiana highway.
Zebras and camels, they are circus animals. They were being saved. Troopers saved the 5 zebras, 4 camels, and a miniature horse from a burning truck. Police say professionals of all stripes were on the job. Everyone's okay.
Here's another bizarre sight. Not part of the circus. A lion in the backseat of this heavy convertible in Thailand. 3 people now facing criminal charges for illegal possession of a wild animal.
Bon, c'est sûr que je vais pas manger maintenant, mais j'ai un petit remède du matin. Rouler une bonne cigarette. Et voilà. Voici ça ici. Pour le moment.
To retaliate against Iranian-backed militants accused of launching a drone attack on a U.S. base in Jordan near the Syrian border. 3 soldiers were killed, dozens were wounded, some of them seriously.
Ukraine's government says top defense officials embezzled $40 million that were meant to buy weapons for the war against Russia. The country's internal security service insists none of the money was for foreign aid.
More than 20 years after he was killed, the trial begins today for 2 men accused of killing Run DMC's Jam Master Jay. Jason Mizell was shot in the group's New York recording studio back in 2002. Prosecutors say the killing stemmed from a dispute over a drug deal.
Today's weather, showers in the northwest, record high temperatures possible from Seattle to Las Vegas. Snow ending in New England this morning, about 4 inches west of Boston.
Finally, the basketball fan who's a real menace to opposing teams.
That's our Danny New explains.
Good luck on the first one this season. Fans out here for
When you watch a Brooklyn Nets game, you may notice a fan who is allowed pretty close to the court. Well, at the Barclays Center, he's known as Mr. Whammy.
How often do fans come and try to take selfies with you?
Every minute.
But 88-year-old Bruce Resnick is not just a celebrity, he's part of the defense.
opponent takes a free throw, I'm ready to commit. It's his job to distract them with the magical spell of the whammy.
But what does the whammy do?
Makes them miss foul shots.
Just to keep himself in the shape.
Bruce first bought season tickets to the Nets when they were in New Jersey back in the late 90s. Within a few years, he and his wife Judy became fan favorites. And caught the attention of the man who would eventually coin the whammy name, Nets broadcaster Ian Eagle.
I realized, okay, this has to be addressed on the air. I can't just disregard this. And see, just like this, he just works his way in.
We now ask everyone in attendance to please join us.
Now, sadly, this is the first season without Mrs. Whammy after Judy passed away before the season.
She's up there. She's watching. She's a bigger fan than I was.
Happy birthday, Mr. Whammy! But Mr. Whammy isn't alone. He's got thousands of friends and teammates, even aspiring fellow wizards. But we all know there's only one Mr. Whammy, and he still can't believe it.
You have no idea how wonderful it is to have that kind of adoration from strangers.
And guys, that video for Mr. Whammy's birthday on Saturday, the Nets won that game by 2 points, and their opponent missed 3 free throws. The whammy effect.
Happy belated birthday.
Yes, have a good day.
It's Monday, January 29th, and this conflict has now taken lives of American troops. We start here. Iranian-backed militias launch a deadly attack on Americans overseas. Traumatic brain injuries, other shrapnel wounds, some serious wounds as well. The White House is vowing retribution, so how does it play into potential peace talks? Republicans prepared to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security.
I wish that our government was enforcing the laws passed by the Congress.
Why Alejandro Mayorkas could become just the second cabinet member in history to have his job threatened by Congress. And pro wrestling is between the rock and a hard place.
Wrestling is a very abusive ecosystem where Vince has been the ultimate authority for about 40 years.
At a crucial moment, disturbing accusations against the WWE's longtime leader. From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Brian Milkey. The attack from Hamas on Israel came on October 7th. By October 8th, the U.S. had announced carrier strike groups were on their way to the region, meaning for the last 3 months, the U.S. has been offering its support to Israel, which also, of course, makes us a target.
Iranian-backed forces targeted American troops in both Iraq and Syria. The militants firing at U.S. helicopters who responded with deadly force.
Throughout the Middle East, you got these militant groups that aren't officially linked to any government, though they get their money from all over. In many cases, the U.S. was taking fire from groups who are funded by Iran, which is a dangerous game for everyone, right? If you kind of harass U.S. ships, you might get one type of response, but if you kill members of the U.S. military, at what point does the U.S. strike back, or even go after Iran itself? So far, there have been lots of close calls. Ships have been fired at, but not sunk. U.S. service members have been hurt, but not killed.
The White House blaming Iran-backed militants for the deadly drone attack on a U.S. base in Jordan, near the border with Syria.
Well, yesterday, the U.S. announced that a military outpost in Jordan had been targeted by a drone strike, and that this time, for the first time in this conflict, 3 American troops have been killed. Let's go straight to ABC's Matt Gutman, who's in Tel Aviv, Israel right now. Matt, what do we know about this attack?
Pretty serious attack, Brad. 3 U.S. service members killed right on the border of Jordan and Syria. It's literally on the borderline. It's called Tower 22. Basically, it's a supply base for a different base that the U.S. has in Syria where it fights ISIS. But not only were 3 service members killed, but at least 25 were wounded in this attack. Traumatic brain injuries, other shrapnel wounds, some serious wounds as well. So this is a major escalation, and it was by Iranian-backed proxies in the area. The U.S. considers this yet another provocative act by Iran. So, we have fighting going on in Syria against U.S. troops, attacks on U.S. troops in Iraq, attacks on U.S. shipping and ships in the Red Sea by the Houthis, and the cross-border conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, which is also an Iranian-backed proxy.
So there's a lot going on in the region right now, and the question is, what kind of response are we going to see from the White House and the Pentagon? Is it going to come soon? Are they going to bide their time? And how much of an impact is it going to have? I was going to say, Matt, because there has to be a whole new level when you're talking. There's firing on American service members. There's injuring American service members. Once you start killing American service members, surely the U.S. has to react in a different way, or don't they? It seems that they do, and I think there's going to be some pressure from the Pentagon to make a point. Right. The strikes so far against the Iranian-backed group, the Houthis in Yemen, have been pretty targeted. They've been mostly against their anti-ship missiles. Those are the missiles being used to attack Israeli ships, American ships, British ships, going through the Red Sea to the Suez Canal.
That's the goal, is to deter them, and don't want to go down a path of greater escalation that drives to a much broader conflict.
But this is different. This is a direct attack by an Iranian-backed proxy on U.S. troops. They knew they were there, and it was a successful attack.
President Biden addressing the attack today at an event in South Carolina, vowing to hold those responsible accountable.
Now, most U.S. bases in the region have some sort of air defenses. Basically, they're anti-missile missiles. Typically, they work. They did not work in this case. It's unclear why that happened, but obviously there were pretty catastrophic consequences here. Well, you've been talking to people within Israel who are basically like everything gets more and more out of control as long as the question of Gaza is so unsettled, right? All the devastation there. The CIA director was in the region this weekend talking about a new, longer potential ceasefire, something that would include even more hostages than the ceasefire we saw a little while back. What is the status of that potential deal?
There is a great sense of progress, and I think it's the first real progress that we've seen on a ceasefire in 2 months since the November ceasefire. And it's probably the most progress we've seen since the conflict began 4 months ago. These are significant talks. They're being held in Paris, in Egypt, in Qatar. Now they involve top-level officials from the U.S., Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and Hamas. They're not meeting directly in Israel and Hamas, but they are working on a framework agreement. And this is going to be a much longer-lasting ceasefire. Instead of a week, as it was last time, it's probably going to be 2 months. And the hostages, there are about 100 of them believed still alive in Gaza, being held there, will be released. Israel will also release a number, undisclosed at this point, of Palestinian prisoners being held in its prisons in Israel. But there have been a number of sticking points.
Israel will not give up on the destruction of Hamas, the return of all the hostages, and there will be no security threat from Gaza towards Israel.
The sticking points have really been the length of the ceasefire. Israel wants to get all of its hostages back as quickly as possible and then resume the war. Hamas wants this not to be a ceasefire, but it wants it to be a permanent ceasefire and armistice that's been for some time. It wants the cessation of the conflict. Israel's pretty adamant that that's not going to happen at this point. Israel is under massive pressure to get these living hostages home before it's too late.
They're being tortured, raped. They don't receive their medical treatment, the medicine they need.
It's believed that the conditions under which these people are living in are extremely difficult. And Hamas is obviously desperate to put an end to this war because it and the Palestinians in general have been taking
Ça, ce n'est pas du n'importe quoi.
so much of Gaza is destroyed. So
C'est
many
une
people
litre
not just killed, 26,000
de jus
to the Hamas-run health ministry, but
mélangé avec
60,000 or
des
more
saveurs cristaux.
wounded at this point. So both sides want this to happen.
Celle-là, c'est
The question is, when
de
is
la
it going to be
grenadière
over, and how long will it take for it to actually be implemented?
avec au moins
The US
3,
source told me that even after the ink dries and this
il y
deal
a au
is
moins
signed, it will
90
probably
grammes de
take 2
protéines
weeks to
dedans
implement because it just
avec la
is
peau de la
so
créatine
incredibly
pour les
complex.
muscles.
Well, and the devastation to Gaza that you mentioned is another reason that aid has just been such a big factor in all this. But when we talk about aid, Matt, over the weekend, a bunch of countries pulled their funding for a major UN aid agency that supports the Palestinians because of allegations that aid workers might have helped Hamas with October 7th. I mean, what happened here?
Yeah, the aid agency is known by its acronym UNRWA, and UNRWA's been around since 1949. It's the largest Palestinian aid agency. It's the biggest provider of social welfare, food. Right now, it's housing many, many hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who've been displaced in the fighting, and it is a critical safety net in Gaza. However, Israel has put forth these allegations, and apparently they seem to be legitimate enough for the UN to have immediately fired everyone who Israel alleges was involved.
Any employee of UNRWA who is involved in acts of terror will be held accountable, including through criminal prosecution.
Israel says that it knows that these people were involved because they saw them on all the videos that were live streamed by Hamas and the other organizations and random people who crossed from Gaza into Israel to loot and do all the other terrible things that happened on October 7th. And Israel says they know that these UN workers were involved because they captured some of them and interrogated them.
Wow.
So the evidence, which we have not yet seen, seems to be strong enough that at this point, 10 nations have said that they will suspend their contributions to UNRWA effective immediately. And UNRWA and the UN are now saying that they will only be able to continue their operations in the Gaza Strip until the end of the month. And then it's a big question of what happens then, and nobody knows the answer to that.
Wow, unbelievable how in flux so many parts of this story are as it continues to develop. Matt Gutman tracking it in Tel Aviv right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Next up on Start here, the Homeland Security Secretary's own job might not be secure. We're back in a bed.
Ça, c'est du bon. Nice. Je fais comme annonce. We'll be right back. Because right now I'm tripping it like cloud 9. And if you don't know what that is, it's very simple. It's when you don't, in the jungle where you feel like a king or a lion chasing after a gazelle, open air. You become the gazelle and you lick the lion or the whatever is looking at you. I roll them back and you start picking up speed at like 90 miles an hour in zigzag.
Which would usually be under the jurisdiction of the federal government. It's a federal border. Despite a Supreme Court order saying that the feds can impose authority there, Texas is not voluntarily giving back control.
We have secured this part of the border. We secured it.
In fact, today, a group of far-right protesters is organizing a convoy of vehicles that will drive down toward the border, saying they're on a mission from God to stop migration into the U.S. So tensions were already high. Conservative politicians had vowed to make this a top issue in November. Then yesterday in Washington, Republican lawmakers released a draft document that they say will be used to impeach the Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. ABC's Jay O'Brien covers Congress. Jay, talk about tensions ratcheting up. Why the DHS Secretary? Why Alejandro Mayorkas?
Well, this is something that Republicans in the House had wanted to do for quite some time. This is something that further right Republicans especially had been talking about doing for a while.
You can honorably resign or we are going to impeach you. And it's happening very, very soon.
This is a priority, for example, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who had introduced this resolution on the House floor numerous times to impeach Mayorkas, and every single time it got tabled and sent to the Homeland Security Committee, which is the committee that unveiled these impeachment articles on Sunday. The Homeland Security Committee, for a long time, has been investigating the Biden administration's handling of the southern border. Remember, this is a Republican-led committee because Republicans control the House of Representatives. And so, in
That's
these
one.
impeachment articles that they unveiled, they accuse Mayorkas of essentially not doing his job and contributing to the ongoing situation at the U.S. southern border.
Because of Secretary Mayorkas' border
Breakfast
crisis,
time.
American cities and neighborhoods are less safe. Secretary Mayorkas' refusal to enforce the law, which requires him to detain and remove illegal aliens, has tragically increased crime and endangered public safety across the country.
Specifically, they say, and I'll read from the
Pour toi,
impeachment articles
Tipuce.
record, they say he, quote, willfully and
Bonjour.
systemically refused to
Ashalem
comply with federal
likum
immigration laws.
syndicati.
Specifically, what they're talking about
Les
is they say
syndicats.
that he did not institute this widespread detention
Pour
of
toi,
migrants that Border Patrol encountered at the border, and because he
Khalid.
didn't do these massive detentions
Bon,
of
je vais
pretty
regarder
much
les nouvelles.
every single migrant
Parce que
that
ça
Border Patrol
s'aggrave
comes across, he was
la
not
guerre
following
qui commence
U.S. immigration law.
maintenant
That's
directement
the
entre les
basic
États-Unis et
argument
peut-être
that they
l'Iran.
make in these impeachment inquiries.
J'espère que,
secure.
en fait, je vais
The United
prier
States Border Patrol
que
secures the
Khalid
border on behalf
ne
of the
soit pas
American people. That's what we do.
envoyé là-bas.
They also mentioned one more thing where they say that he misled Congress by saying, among other things, that the border was quote unquote secure.